And now on to Venezuela. Since I last spoke on the issue in June, Venezuela has taken further steps away from democracy and towards chaos. With the establishment of a so-called Constituent Assembly, the Venezuelan president, Mr Maduro, has effectively set the stage to perpetuate himself in power at the expense of Venezuelan democracy and the human rights of the Venezuelan people. Many international human rights groups, like Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch, have condemned the Constituent Assembly, as have governments from around the world, including Venezuela's Latin American neighbours and the European Union. There are many concerns with the Constituent Assembly, and I will outline some of the most egregious aspects here. It is entirely made up of ruling party loyalists, including the President's own wife. It's impossible to ascertain the truth regarding the voter turnout, given there were no independent observers and the media was generally not allowed to get close to the voting centres. But it's widely believed that turnout was low. Millions of Venezuelans had previously expressed their opposition to the proposal through a plebiscite on the 16th of July. It has the power to stop the National Assembly, Venezuela's parliament, democratically elected parliament, from operating. Indeed, the new body is meeting where the opposition-controlled National Assembly holds its sessions. It removed the Attorney-General, Luisa Ortega-Diaz, from her position in one of its first decisions. Ms Ortega has once been a government loyalist, but more recently has been a critic. The chair of Transparency International, Jose Ugaz, has said, without an autonomous judiciary that provides for checks and balances to the government, democracy is impossible. The lack of an independent Attorney-General office in Venezuela will result in even more impunity for illicit enrichment in a country where corruption is already rampant. Indeed, Venezuela ranks amongst the most corrupt nations on the planet. It can indefinitely suspend elections. Elections for governors, which were supposed to take place last year, are now scheduled for December 2017. Presidential elections should take place in 2018. It will be critical to ensure that elections proceed as planned. Not to mention the fact that the Assembly itself is unconstitutional. Instead of holding a plebiscite to ask voters whether they approved of his plan, as experts generally agree is required, Maduro did it through a presidential decree. And I note that previous President Chavez himself held a plebiscite on changing the country's constitution, which was defeated and it didn't go ahead. In addition to the establishment of the Constituent Assembly and the sacking of the Attorney-General, on Sunday the 20th, 20 people in the military uniforms attacked a military base and stole weapons. The attackers said they wanted to save the country from total destruction, but this is a very disturbing development, especially in light of international experts' concerns that Venezuela will slide into civil war with devastating consequences for the instability of the region and, of course, for human rights. This attack is an example of the increasing chaos in Venezuela, and I call on all sides, both government and opposition, to deplore violence and stand up against human rights abuses and to move towards restoring democratic processes. Given the violence and deaths that we are seeing on our TV screens, and it is increasingly being covered here in Australia and in newspapers, the violence seems to be progressively worsening. I will say here today as well, Acting Deputy President, that I've met with a number of Venezuelans in Australia and living in Australia, including in Tasmania and in Melbourne, and they're all good people, and they have very, very grave concerns for their families and loved ones back in Venezuela. And it's on their behalf that I stand here today and represent this issue in the Australian Parliament.